Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Kawhi Leonard, as we are sitting here right now, is out indefinitely. These are the words of the Clippers. We don't know when he's coming back. Based on some of the reporting that I've been able to unearth, the news is he's going to be out for weeks. I'm just going to assume he's going to be out for at least another a month or two, right? Or even 3 months. Who knows? I'm just going to say a month or two. And the reason being is because the Clippers want to find a lasting remedy to ensure that when he does return to the court, he is there on a consistent basis, not on a load management basis and all of that. So that's been the reporting around Kawhi Leonard. In tandem with that, you also have the reporting of Stephen A. Smith on Kawhi Leonard. Stephen A. Smith has said on more than one occasion that Kawhi Leonard is the worst NBA superstar in the history of the sport. That's a mouthful, but that's been one of his lines over the last few years, that Kawhi Leonard is the worst ever, to the point where it's even gotten him into some dicey situations with former NBA players on TV, like when he had the infamous spat with JJ Redick on ESPN First Take for his comments towards Kawhi Leonard. So what happened? This weekend I was going through the internet and I came across some clips from the Dan Batard show. And he was talking about a bunch of things. As a matter of fact, he just had to sit down with Skip Bayless. But he was talking about a bunch of things. But then he started to talk about the coverage of Stephen A. Smith, this coverage from Stephen A. Smith about Kawhi Leonard. And he was just basically calling him out for the way he's been describing the situation and not really getting into the investigative side of it, where instead he just seems to be more concerned with painting narratives that he's the worst player to ever play in the NBA. So what we want to do now is we want to play some of his comments about Stephen A. Smith and his coverage about Kawhi Leonard, and then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
Perfectly healthy, and both of their wide receivers are in. Stafford could look like the champion that he is. But before we get to that story, I wanted to ask the group what kind of interest level there was on everything that was leaking out yesterday involving Kawhi Leonard and Kawhi Leonard's trainer suing the Clippers, because I thought this was the biggest story from yesterday in sports. And I also thought that the last 10 years of this player and the ingredients around this player have made it so bewildering that Stephen A. Smith, who's bouncing between Hannity and doing the First Take thing that him and Skip Bayless birthed all over sports debate television, called him the worst superstar in sports ever. And I have that commentary on First Take. And I'm looking at some of these lawsuit details, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. If they totally screwed up this guy's body and somebody who was actually caring about him since he was in college was trying to help get his body right, and now he's suing the Clippers when it's a person who was also involved with everything that was happening with the Spurs and that medical condition, you've got the quietest superstar we've ever seen in sports leaving the Spurs under suspicious circumstances, and now you've got his trainer with the Clippers turning around and saying, hey, I didn't agree with his care. And Kawhi Leonard is viewed as somebody who, when we saw him play, he's the last guy who took down everybody as just one guy. Everything around him has been super teams. He started with a super team as the third or fourth best player on it. He's a multi-time champion. And he's been the number one on one of the champions, and LeBron only feared him when he was on the Spurs as a young player. This is a great player who has been damaged by his medical care, and I don't think anybody in sports cares.
He ended the Durant Warriors. I don't want to say ended the Warriors because they ended up winning another title afterwards, but he did so with one of the greatest individual efforts while never having 2 feet off the ground. If you watch that, it's crazy. It's so much old man game, and it's just like, I'll dial up my body when I need to.
So what are my thoughts on this? Kawhi Leonard is low-hanging fruit. He's an easy target because, number one, he doesn't talk so much. And number two, for him constantly being injured. It's one of the reasons you have Charles Barkley ranking him out of the top 50 players in the NBA, although last year he made the all second team, but then somehow, because he's always injured, but then somehow found a way to rank Joel Embiid in his top 10. And now we're hearing that he may have been misdiagnosed, or maybe the treatment they were giving him was incorrect based on the lawsuit that came out against him from a former medical staff member. So to me, look, I don't think Kawhi Leonard's image is going to ever be rehabilitated unless he plays and plays well. That's simple. You can't talk your way into defending Kawhi Leonard. Like, oh, no, man, you guys don't understand. I think you need to look at it this way. You need to look at it that way. You're wrong about. No, I don't think that's going to work. No one wants to hear you at this point. People want to see results. Is that point? It's like there are no gray areas with this Kawhi Leonard thing. You can't talk him into a good light. It has to be he comes back and he plays well. And he goes on a long playoff run. And he does that for a few years. It is that simple. But calling out people like Stephen A. Smith and others for misrepresenting the situation, we've done that before. We've done that a bunch of times. Really didn't sway opinions to the point where you're like, man, people are really looking at Kawhi Leonard differently. No, it didn't. People are always going to maintain what they want to maintain. And in the case of Stephen A. Smith, this is the picture that he wants painted of Kawhi Leonard, that he's useless, he's doesn't do anything for basketball, blah, 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 blah. So the only way for him to combat it is for Kawhi to come back, play well, have a good season. It is literally that simple. This is the show that I'm pleasantly surprised at. This is a topic that I really didn't foresee myself producing, at least for the first half of this season. Now, coming into this season, I think you guys knew why I stood with the Clippers. The Clippers have disappointed me over the last 5 years. It's like being in an abusive relationship. They've just been emotionally abusing me and so many of the supporters. And once again, they did it again. Just when you thought, okay, well, Clippers might be able to do something now coming into the season with the new arena. Kawhi and these guys are going to do their thing. We now hear that Kawhi Leonard is going to be out indefinitely. Then we heard the bombshell report surrounding a former trainer or someone from the medical staff suing the Clippers for malpractice with Kawhi Leonard, all kind of crazy stuff, right? And all of these pieces of news just kept on dampening my spirits when it came to this team. And I was like, man, this is going to be a disaster. So what happened? Opening night of the NBA season, they lost a thriller to Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns, and KD was KD in that game. And I said to myself, actually, I said, I'm going to follow them, but not to the extent where I'm going to be making any content about the Clippers, because I just don't have I don't have the energy to deal with the people flaming me up in the comment section, just accusing me of twerking it up, slapping myself with honey, all kind of madness. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to totally avoid it. But yesterday I witnessed the Clippers play a game against the Golden State Warriors, which was their third game this season. And as I was watching the game, I started watching it from the beginning, I noticed something different about this team. I noticed that they were playing with a lot more tenacity, a lot more focus, and structure on the defensive side of the floor. And as I was watching them, I'm saying to myself, this team looks really good. They look really, really good. And then as the game went on, obviously they won the game, and I'm looking at all these players play well. And I'm like, man, and so at the end of the game, and then I started going through the stats, the team stats, and the players that they added. And what I found absolutely surprised me to the point I'm like, they may have something here. So let me get into some of the data here that I was able to unearth here. Okay, let's get into some of the numbers. First of all, the number one reason that the Clippers look so good this year is because of their defense. That's the number one thing you can attribute it to. Ever since they acquired Paul George and Kawhi, I remember when they acquired Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, one of the things that people were saying was, man, this is going to be the best defensive team in the NBA. Why were they saying that? The reason they were saying that was because the team had players like Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Beverley, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. Paul George is an all-NBA defender. Kawhi Leonard had won multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards and had guarded players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jimmy Butler, and these guys the year before he joined the Clippers in the playoffs. So it was like, this is going to be a great defensive team. But it was a total opposite. The Clippers were never a good defensive team at all. For the entirety of their time there, they never play defense, which seems counterintuitive given the level of defenders that they had on their roster. But this year is totally different. One of the reasons the Clippers are so good is where they rank defensively. As we're currently now, it's only 3 games. The Clippers are ranked number 3 out of the 30 teams in terms of their defensive rating. That's the first part. Another byproduct of that, not byproduct, another catalyst for that is the fact that they added former NBA coach, defensive-minded coach, Jeff Van Gundy to their bench. That was a key off-season acquisition, and in some of these games that I've seen the Clippers play, you can actually see Jeff Van Gundy actively engage in the games, yelling out defensive coverages and all of that stuff to players. I've seen it. So I think the addition of Jeff Van Gundy has played a role. The commitment to the defensive side of the floor, and it was something that Terrence Mann said. He said, this is the best defensive team I've ever seen. But another part of it has to do with their personnel. Now, they've added some players that I don't even know, right? They added Derrick Jones Jr., who used to be a Mav last year. He's a great player, great length, 3-and-D guy, very athletic. They added Chris Dunn. They added Kevin Porter Jr. They brought back Nicholas Batum. They have Kai Jones. They have Mo Bamba. They have, who else do they have on the team? Cam Christie, Kobe Brown. I saw him get some minutes yesterday. And Joshua Primo. A bunch of new faces. I used to know, usually following the Clippers, I used to know every single player on the roster. I'm like, some of these guys, I have no idea who they are. Right? So they've added some great players that are complementary to one another. And then I want to get to the next part, which is the person leading the team in James Harden. James Harden coming into this season, you could basically see the red in his eyes because he was like, man, I'm about to go off. He was saying that I'm going to be aggressive. This is going to be my year and I'm going to do my thing. And James Harden has a green light for the Clippers. He's averaging more shot attempts this year. And this is the most shot attempts James Harden's averaged since 2019 to 2020 season. He's averaging 19.3 field goals a game. Now, his efficiency isn't there. He's only shooting 36.2% from the field, but he's also doing some other, and only 19% from the 3, but he's also doing some other things good. Number 1, if you foul him, he's going to make 90% of his free throws. That's what he's doing this year. Number 2, he's getting you 8 rebounds a game. And number 3, he's getting you the most assists that he's averaged, just going through his career. In his NBA career, he's averaging a career high in assists with 11.7 assists per game, while getting you 0.7 steals. But guess what? There's something else we have to look at, which is his turnovers, which is 6.7. So James Harden hasn't been great, but it is clear to see that had he not been a part of what this team is doing, they wouldn't be where they are. What he needs to work on is cutting down his turnovers, because it's insane, almost 7 a game, and improve his efficiency from the floor. So we have that. And the final thing is, I'm watching this, and now it's beginning to make me think, well, what could this team be if Kawhi Leonard would be back? Well, looking at the Western Conference standings right now, obviously, is very early. We're not going to make too much of the NBA standings. In the Western Conference, the Clippers are the number 6 seed. The Lakers are the number 1 seed, which is shocking of it to me at least. But they're the number 6 seed. To me, coming into this season, I had them fighting for one of the play-in tournament spots at the bottom. I think that if they can improve their shooting, especially with James Harden, maybe they could improve their seeding to where at least they could probably be the 6th seed. But now that we know that Kawhi Leonard will come back, and if he does come back, he's coming back on a consistent basis, or a permanent basis rather, then who knows? Who knows? This team could be a playoff team. Teams that we thought were going to be better this year don't really seem to be panning out in that direction. You look at teams like the Dallas Mavericks. They're not looking as good as they were last season. Houston is there. The Spurs are kind of floundering a bit. Obviously, it's a little bit early. Look at the Denver Nuggets. They're 0-2 to start the season. So a lot of things can happen. But as of now, I am pleasantly surprised at what the Clippers are doing. I'm not saying they're going to win anything. No, I'm not saying that. But they're doing better than I expected. So as you guys know, Uncle Ben Simmons, Mr. Ben, Uncle Ben, Ben Simmons has got to be the biggest joker we have going in the NBA. He has got to be the biggest joker in the NBA. Why am I saying this? All of you know that Ben Simmons has been out here for the last few years, literally earning tens of millions of dollars every single year to either not play games, or when he does play, he absolutely stinks up the environment. He's like a skunk on the court, always stinking it up. So what happened yesterday, there was a game between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets, another team I'm going to get to momentarily, where Ben Simmons was playing in the game. And as I was watching the game, I watched bits and pieces of it, and I checked the box score. I think at the time I checked the score, he had only attempted 2 shots. Only 2 shots. And I'm like, Uncle Ben, that's Uncle Ben for you. Then it gets to the end of the game, and I see that Ben Simmons finished the game with a whopping. The guy finished the game with a whopping 2 points, 2 turnovers, 1 steal, 6 assists on 33% shooting from the field, attempting 3 shots. And I saw that, I was like, this guy cannot even be real. But that wasn't even a thing that sent me over the edge. It was a clip that I saw online that was trending all over the internet of Uncle Ben himself going out there on a 3-on-1 fast break. Ben Simmons is about to get to the cup, and instead of just laying the ball up, he tries to go around the defender and pass the ball to his teammate and totally screws up the game. And after that, the announcers calling the game start to rip Ben Simmons for his flagrant reluctance to be aggressive as an NBA player. So what we want to do now is we want to play the sound of the announcers reacting to Uncle Ben out there stinking up the place. Take a listen to what they had to say here.
Finney Smith's 3. So we're about to have another.
We've talked a lot about Cam Thomas.
Oh, Simmons bounces it away. Simmons shovels, gets it back. But Ben Simmons just...
He has to go to the basket on that. Get it and go.
Schroeder, no.
You've got a 3-on-1. You got to go attack the basket. I know Brook Lopez is there. That is exactly what you're talking about with him. You either draw a foul or you make a basket. You cannot be afraid of getting fouled in that scenario.
No, his reluctance to go to the rim is just, it's staggering to watch on plays like that.
And it's even, the pass was too early. You're passing in traffic, which was allowed for that breakup to happen.
So you heard what they had to say. Folks, Ben Simmons is not serious. Ben Simmons is not serious. Coming into this season, yet again, Ben Simmons went out there talking about some damn, hey man, I guess people forgot how good I was. It's like people forgot how good I was. They don't know what they about to see. I guess they forgot how. Let me read you Ben Simmons' stat line this season. In 3 NBA games. By the way, this year he's we're gonna get into salary in a minute. Ben Simmons is playing 24 minutes a game, attempting 2 field goal attempts per game, shooting 50% from the field, shooting 75% from the free throw line. That's the highest he's ever shot in his career. That's the highest ever. You're like, man, this guy's really improved. Well, he's attempting 1.3 a game. 1.3 a game, which goes back to the play where he was afraid to get fouled. Getting you 5.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists, averaging 5 points a game. Ben Simmons is averaging 5 points a game in the NBA while playing 24 minutes a game. Let's get into Ben Simmons' salary for a second. Ben Simmons' salary. Ben Simmons, I got to get into this. I want to tell y'all how much this dude is about to get paid not about to get paid, will be getting paid this year. Ben Simmons will be earning $40,338,144 this year in the NBA to average 5 points per game. To average 5 points per game. This is the dude that was out there telling people, the people that are saying that Ben Simmons is stealing money, that I'm stealing money, karma is going to come back to get them for saying that. One of the biggest excuses his supporters have made about him over the year was, well, Ben Simmons is injured. He's injured. What do you expect from an injured player? What is he supposed to do? For God's sakes, he's injured. Well, this season, in the off season, we've heard, and even coming into training camp, that he's 100% healthy, even by his own admission. So what is the excuse? For Ben Simmons to be averaging 4 field goal attempts per game while making $40 million a year. Make it make sense. They're paying him $40 million a year. So for like every quarter of the games of the season, this guy's getting paid $10 million. To produce these type of garbage, this is a career low. Across the board. Field goal attempts, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, points. Across the board. Now, some of y'all are like, well, it's only 3 games. No, you're not going to be able to get away with that. The reason you're not going to be able to get away with, it's just only 3 games, is because of the highlight we played for you. That highlight proved that he still has that same mental block. And it has nothing to do with his injuries. Ben Simmons did not want to get fouled. He didn't want to get fouled. He does not want to shoot the ball. He does not. At all. His reluctance to be aggressive has nothing to do with his injury, or at least going up to try to make a layup where you can get fouled. Because Ben Simmons does not want to go to the free throw line. But he sure has no problem going to the bank. See how that works? He has no problem going to the free throw line, but when it's time to go to the bank, he's going to be there in full effect. He's going to help him open up the bank in the morning. He's going to be sweeping up there with the janitors just to make sure everything works. So the minute they open the bank, he's collecting his money. Ben Simmons is the biggest joke we got going in the NBA. Uncle Ben. That's what he is. Uncle Ben. The biggest time waster in the NBA. I never took Ben Simmons seriously. Never. Never. Absolutely never. Some people talking about, I was like, I think Kawhi might get traded this season. Like, who gonna trade for him? He's injured. Well, Ben Simmons was injured and his ass got traded. Somebody wanted his ass. So if somebody wanted Ben Simmons, for damn sure somebody gonna want Kawhi Leonard. And the difference is when both of these players are healthy, one guy's an all-NBA player and this other guy is just up there wasting everybody's time. Ben Simmons. Just 2 years ago, a lot of people were out there saying that, man, the Milwaukee Bucks look like they can go out there and win the NBA championship. And the reason everybody was saying that was because of them acquiring disgruntled star in Portland, Damian Lillard. When the Bucks acquired Damian Lillard to pair him with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton, a lot of people felt that they were going to win the championship. And to be quite frank with you, I can understand why they felt like that. You had a team that had already won a championship. You're now adding a top 75 player in Damian Lillard to the fold, a guy that has a totally complementary skill set to Giannis. They don't do the same things at all. To a roster that had already been battle tested and constantly in the playoffs, one thought that they would go out there and have a great season, but that was a total opposite. Giannis got hurt last year, total disaster. But coming into this season, we thought that things were going to change because remember last year they fired Mike Budenholzer and replaced him with Doc Rivers, a controversial move at the time because Doc Rivers had gotten fired from Philly, before he got fired from the Clippers. So you had that. A lot of people were laughing about that. Like, how could this happen? Even me myself, I was laughing about it. So they get Doc Rivers and they have the season that they have last year. coming into this season, we got the news that Chris Middleton was going to be missing for a little bit. But nevertheless, they still had enough players like Portis, Lopez, Giannis, Lillard, and whoever else they have on the roster to at least be a competitive team. But then what happened? They dropped the first game of the season, not the first game. The first game they lost, their first loss of the season, was to the lowly Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls. If we pull up the NBA standings right now, the Chicago Bulls in the Eastern Conference, okay, they're the number 7 seed, right? But still, the Chicago Bulls. But just when you thought it couldn't get even more humiliating, they lost to the Ben Simmons-led Brooklyn Nets last night. In that game, I think they lost. I forgot the box score. And it's not even important. They lost the damn game. And after that, Milwaukee Bucks fans started to go into a full-blown panic. And now a lot of people are saying, is Giannis even going to make it to the end of the season? Because if you guys remember, Giannis said that if the team doesn't deliver this year, he may get traded. Now, it sounds crazy coming from the superstar of an organization that they would just trade him away like that, like as if he's the number one person that they would trade. Usually in the NBA, they get rid of coaches or they trade other players. They don't trade away their centerpiece. But so for Giannis to say that, a lot of us were scratching our heads. But as we currently speak, the Milwaukee Bucks are off to a 1-2 start. And it's not that it's not that they're losing games. The question is who they're losing to. They're losing to the Bulls and the Nets. And if you can't even beat those teams, how are you supposed to be able to compete with the Knicks or compete with the Boston Celtics, who are the class of the Eastern Conference? And now a lot of people are going to be going back to that old tried and true line, which is, are we about to witness another season of Doc Rivers absolutely stinking up the place? I think it would be absolutely fair to look in the direction of Doc Rivers, just to start. Why? One of the reasons this Milwaukee Bucks is so bad is because they are a horrendous defensive team. They rank 23 out of the 30 teams in the NBA. 23. When you have pillars on your roster like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez, you rank 23. Now, granted, they lost Drew Holiday, and they paid for that defensively by basically swapping out offense for defense in Dame and Drew Holiday. But nevertheless, that's still no reason to be this bad defensively. That's still no reason to be getting beaten by the Chicago Bulls and the damn Ben Simmons-led Brooklyn Nets. Like, that's the one that's even more egregious. That's the one where it's just like, this is inexcusable. But that's what we're seeing. In the case of Doc Rivers, folks, if Doc Rivers' team finds a way to screw it up this year, I'm not sure Doc Rivers is going to get another job in the NBA if they fire him this year. He's going to be hard-pressed to find another sucker in the NBA to give him a job. You're going to be hard-pressed. Because if you look at his former situations, he's just been fired all over the place. And it's all ended in total disaster. With the Clippers, they got blown out. They lost a 3-1 lead. They blew that one. Okay. Then they got to the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, we all know what happened there. An absolute disaster. And now we find ourselves in Milwaukee. And the irony in all of this is Milwaukee fired their former head coach. I think it's Griffin. They fired him even though he actually was coaching and the team was doing pretty well. They fired him. And you had the players basically kumbayaing it up in the middle of the court, celebrating the fact that their coach got fired, to then replace him with Doc Rivers, and now look what you got. And if you want a little humor injected into this story, they got Darvin Ham on the bench, just for people that feel like laughing. That's just some comic relief. If you guys feel like laughing, I don't know whatever that means. If you want to get a giggle or two, they got Darvin Ham on the bench. It's a mess. It's a mess. Let's look at Giannis for a second. Giannis has to do better. Giannis Antetokounmpo has to do better. Giannis be talking like as if he's a sixth man or a role player. Giannis is the best player on the floor. They got Giannis ranked as one of the 3 best players in the NBA today. So some of this has to fall at the doorstep of Giannis. Because if it was any other player, they'll be roasting him up from here to wherever. If it was LeBron, they'll be frying him. If it was KD, they'll be frying him. If it was Kawhi, they'll be deep frying him. Stephen A. would be saying the worst superstar in the history of the world. So, in the case of the Bucks, some of this falls on Giannis Antetokounmpo's feet. Some of this does. In the case of Dame, I'm not even sure if Damian Lillard wants to be there. We all know that his preferred destination was to go play with the Miami Heat. That was his preferred destination. So to me, look, this is my outlook on this team. I think that if the Milwaukee Bucks have a disappointing campaign this year, a few things are going to happen. One of their stars is either going to get moved. That's either Dame or Giannis. And we could witness possibly a situation where, again, Doc Rivers gets fired, which would just be insane. Which would just be absolutely insane. And Stephen A. Smith said, if Doc Rivers gets fired again, folks, this may be his last opportunity to coach in the NBA.